Okay, we dealing with Kundalini and Christianity. In the future, I'll be dealing with Kundalini as a concept, a metaphysical idea and concept in Christianity, the Bible, the Hebrew tradition, Hebrew mythology, and we'll be exploring everywhere that we can in the Western traditions. They call it the Abrahamic traditions of where this Kundalini was documented, and if does it even exist there. So right now we're dealing with the Pistis Sophia, which is a Gnostic text. It's very popular, it's widespread. If you haven't heard of it, you might want to go get a copy, read it. It's pretty advanced. It's got everything spiritual, all of the substance and concepts you need to learn all of these advanced ideas. For me though, right now, I'm gonna be dealing with a particular verse in a particular section of the Pistis Sophia, where we see signs and for sure we see evidence of their knowledge, the Gnostic and the early Christian traditions knowledge of the Kundalini. And I'm gonna read it. It says he who has smitten the serpent with 7 heads with my hands has set me up over its root, that I should wipe out its seed. That is the word which the Pistis Sophia said, and thou hast smitten the serpent with 7 heads with my hands, and thou hast set me up over its matter. Now, if you read in context in this chapter in the Pistis Sophia, much earlier on, it mentions a 7-headed serpent, a 7-headed dragon. It also mentions a 7-headed dragon. And I'm bringing this out, okay, because I'm trying to convey an idea to you that in the ancient world, there was a universal spiritual network, a network of holy men and holy women that would anchor themselves on their priesthoods and their temples. They all had the same general metaphysical understandings and teachings. It's just as time progressed, they may have different city-state religious institutions that began to go to war with each other. So with this 7-headed dragon, okay, you see that the 7-headed serpent or the 7-headed dragon, when you study the ancient Eastern spiritual traditions, this is real popular amongst the Hindu and Buddhist systems. Now, Hinduism and Buddhism both derive from a more ancient Eastern system called the Shamanic tradition, Shramana. Also, philosophical schools like Vedanta, which comes out of Sankhya. Okay, so these branches of the tree of the spiritual traditions of the East, okay, were also connected with the forest of trees, which was spread as far as Persia, Syria, and what we call the Levant, which is the Middle East. Israel, Palestine, as far down as ancient Egypt. This is called the Gnostic network. Before it was called Gnostic, the particular terminology for this is synchronistic religions or synchronistic spiritual traditions of the ancient world. They all have the same general pantheon and hierarchy of deities and concepts. It's just different languages and different cultures. And we'll be demonstrating that and proving that thoroughly. So our assumption is only the Greeks and the Romans had a synchronistic tradition. That Zeus is the same as Jupiter. But what we don't understand, and what has not been unpacked for us in theology and different institutions like the public school system or even the universities, is that people like Max Muller, people like Immanuel Kant, people like Sigmund Freud, there's many names, psychologists, anthropologists, theologists, books, libraries, innumerable, to quote, that, for instance, the thunder deity, the thunder god that we hear about in the Greek pantheon is the same as the Roman. They're synchronized, they're the same, they come from the same root. Well, that thunder deity, you can find him in Sumer as Marduk, you can find him amongst India as Indra, you can find him in Africa as Amun-Ra, or Re, the god Re or Amun-Re. You can find him in the intercore of Africa, the interior of Africa, called Shango, Yakuta. So you have this thunder deity, all pervasive as a staple king of the gods, leader of the gods all throughout the world. So that's just an example. You can do the same thing with the All-Father deity, which is the elderly father deity. You can do that throughout all spiritual traditions, and you can find the Great Mother throughout all spiritual traditions. You can find the divine daughter throughout all spiritual traditions. So what will be left is the Christ figure, right? And the divine feminine counterpart to that Christ figure, the female Christ figure and the male Christ figure. They're universal. So the symbols and concepts that you will find in India and in Asia, we are under the assumption, because of what's called xenophobia and what will also be called Hindu phobia, that the ideas that are in Buddhism and Hinduism, their texts, their teachings, their theology is completely derived from a different origin than what the Hebrew tradition and the Christian tradition derives from. So I'll make this last point about that connection, is that the Hebrews genetically themselves, their Syrian extraction of DNA, their Syrian lineage derives originally from as far as India. Okay, what's called the Kashmir region, which is in western East India. And they were known as the Kundalini tribes, or the Kundalini people. That's what Abraham descends from. You know, he has his ancestors, Terah, Nahor, as far back as Eber, Arphaxad, Peleg, all of these ancestors. So all of these are eponymous ancestors. They're not literal. We can't find their graves, and we can't find their bodies or their bones. But they do trace back to key historical landmarks and places and tribes of people throughout times. And we can document that very gracefully, very easily in the future. Is no problem. But Abraham descends from India. Abraham's ancestors were Hindus, okay? So if we know this, then that should give us a clear line of distinction that there is a network or a tree that should take us from Palestine or Judea, the land of Israel, the land of Canaan, and the Syrians that moved there, which would be Abraham and his sons, and their connection with India. So if the blood is connected, there's some words that are loan words and folk words that, if you study folk etymology and you study etymology of the Hebrew language, that derives from India. Matter of fact, we'll deal with the word Kundalini and how that is found amongst the Hebrew language. Also the word Shakti, because Kundalini, Shakti, you have other words that are loan words and folk words that end up in the Hebrew language. We'll unpack that probably the next tape. But for now, we find that the Kundalini concept is in the Old Testament, which I'm going to document as well. It's also in the New Testament, and we find it in the Gnostic tradition. And that this here, speaking about the seven-headed serpent, the seven heads represent the seven different chakras within our body. That's how we know that these theological myths and allegories and concepts, these symbols, are universal, because they universally are speaking about your inner biology, which is for your anatomy called physiology, your physiology of your body, your different systems, your nervous system, your respiratory system, all of these different systems in your body. So those seven dragons represent your seven endocrine glands, your 7 to 8 major endocrine glands in your endocrine system. And it's saying that the Christ was able to get the power to slay that domination, that control over the human soul, because the metaphor and the metaphysics of these Gnostic teachings, which we call Christianity, is to overcome the body, to overcome and conquer the ego, to overcome the material world. So that really what translates to conquer and defeat the deities and principles that are in life and in the world. So your human body is your direct interaction with the physical world through your nervous system, you understand? Through your endocrine system, you understand? So those seven glands are those seven heads of this dragon. Right here mentioned in the pre-Christian or the early Christian tradition of Gnosticism in the Pistis Sophia. So what would Sophia be? Sophia is the Shakti energy. Sophia is many Sophias. You have Barbella Sophia, Pistis Sophia, Prunicos Sophia. It's so many Sophias, okay? So those Sophias are different levels within these 7 realms, different levels of attainment of that Sophia. These realms that are internal, inside of our body, that's how we know these myths are talking about something deeper than just deities external somewhere out in the cosmos, but they are not literal physical entities. They're abstract concepts that are symbols for our body, okay, for our internal physiology, so, and our psychology. So those different Sophias are at different levels of these seven worlds, because as within, so without. These internal realms house different levels of the Sophia. The Hebrews and the Kabbalah call her Shekinah. The Hindus in India and some of the Buddhist sects, they call her Shakti. Shakti. So Kundalini Shakti is the energy of the feminine principle within our human nervous system, our human endocrine system, which would be consciousness itself, your operating consciousness, your operating mind. You understand? The flame that gives you the breath and the energy that feeds your neurons and your neurotransmitters in your brain. Okay, your nervous system, these nerves upon your spine. That is symbolized as female principal deities. A whole universe of them within, as within, so without. A whole universe externally. You understand? So Sophia in the myths of the Gnostics and the Christians, which they elaborate, incarnate within the Virgin Mary. She would be Barbello. They incarnate within Martha and different principal devotees of the Christ, different female saints, and also the primary female saint, Mary Magdalene, which would represent the lowest Shakti. Okay, and she's possessed by Lilith and a lot of the lower Shaktis, but she's able to attain all of the higher states of Shakti in her enlightenment. That's Mary Magdalene. So these are the divine feminine principles that embody the Kundalini Shakti rising and conquering this dragon, this serpent, which is our own spine. Do you understand? It's our own nervous system. That is what this text is talking about. So that's, for reference sake, the Kundalini in Christianity, the Kundalini in early Gnostic texts in the Gnostic tradition. This is out of the Epistles of Sophia.